Happy Sunday, freeze dryers. Today's recipe is going to warm your soul, get you out of that winter slump, and it's just an American classic. We're doing beef stew today, and we're gonna freeze dry it coming up. Beef stew is such a classic dish, and it just fills your belly and makes you feel good after you eat it. And it's pretty quick to throw together. We're basically just gonna throw everything into a pot. We'll let it cook for a while, and then we're gonna freeze dry it. It's gonna be easy to rehydrate. Stews and soups and things like that are always so easy to rehydrate. Let's get started. First ingredient to beef stew, of course, is beef. A lot of people use roast just because it's simmering and slow cooking for so long. It makes it real tender. Just make sure that you trim as much fat as you can off of it, and we're gonna go into a pot after this is diced, and we're just gonna cook it for about 3 minutes. We want 1 to 2 pounds of our cubed beef, and then once you cube that, we're gonna take, instead of using oil, we're gonna take some beef broth and actually cook it in the beef broth until it's done. And a few tablespoons should be plenty, and this is just a replacement for oil. So add your beef. I would recommend small cubes or thin strips. We're gonna cook this until it's done, and then we're gonna add some more delicious ingredients. And those next ingredients, we're gonna do onions and garlic. You're gonna want 3 small onions or 2 medium-sized onions. We're gonna dice those up and throw those in next. So once your beef is cooked, we're gonna add our onion and 8 cloves of garlic. If you have minced garlic like this, it's about 4 teaspoons. And we're gonna cook our garlic and our onions in with our beef for about 3 more minutes. We're gonna really bring out the flavor in both of those. And while we're cooking that, we're gonna do 6 carrots and 6 stalks of celery. We're gonna cut those up into bite-sized pieces as well and throw those in next. And all of our ingredients today, you're gonna want to make pretty small pieces when you're dicing, for that same reason as the beef, where it's just going to take longer to rehydrate if you don't. And if you find this starting to kind of dry out as you're doing this, just add a little bit more broth just to soften it up and as an oil replacement. That'll keep everything from burning. And we're going to add those in. Those are going to cook for about 3 minutes or until they're just barely tender. Just make sure you don't put too much moisture in, because our next step, we're gonna add some more moisture. Then you're gonna take 4 potatoes. We want to cube these, again, small as you can. I know beef stew typically is best if it's chunky. At least that's the way that I like it, and I'm used to it. But we don't want to, especially on potatoes, get too much thickness, because it will take quite a while to rehydrate. I'm gonna dice mine just about that big. Smaller cubes are definitely gonna do better. You can either dice up your potatoes before or after this step, but you will have to keep an eye on this. Once we add our 6 tablespoons of flour, it needs to be stirred constantly. So we're gonna stir all of this up. We're gonna continuously stir this for about 2 minutes. Then we wanna add 2 cans of Guinness or some other kind of stout beer. This adds a lot of sweetness. It adds a lot of extra flavor. Also adds some body to this stew. So once that's all mixed together, we're gonna add those potatoes. Then we're gonna add 6 cups of beef broth, along with 4 tablespoons of soy sauce or liquid aminos, as well as 8 tablespoons of tomato paste, which will be roughly a 6-ounce can of tomato paste. So these next 4 ingredients are completely optional. I like to do some fresh thyme in here, 1 to 2 tablespoons. You can do dried thyme as well. And then I also like to do a tablespoon or 2 of some fresh rosemary. And then a teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of pepper is what I'm doing. You can leave it out, or you can, if you're salt sensitive, if you don't like pepper, you know, just do it according to how you want to do it. I'm doing a teaspoon of each. And then our last ingredient is gonna make or break your beef stew, just depending on how you like the beef stew. This is probably where people are gonna take 2 different paths with beef stew. Some people like beef stew sweet, some people like it not as sweet. The stout beer will actually add quite a bit of sweetness, but our last ingredient, if you wanna add it, is brown sugar. I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons. You can leave it completely out. You can do 2 tablespoons, which is kind of in the middle, I think. The recipe actually calls for 4 tablespoons, so maybe just add a little bit, take a taste, and see where you land. Either way you go, I know one thing that it smells awesome in here, and I'm super stoked for this. This is gonna be really good. Every time I make this, it just fills the house with good smells. We're gonna bring this up to just a light boil, and then once it goes up to a boil, we'll take it down to simmer. You're gonna simmer this for 20 minutes. It's the total texture of this is gonna completely change at that point. You want this to be very thick, very hearty. All right, our beef stew is ready to go. I'm gonna let this cool down for just a little bit before I add it to the trays. I'm gonna go directly onto the trays. We will freeze it so it's pre-frozen before we go into the freeze dryer. Stuff like this benefits a whole lot from pre-freezing just because it's mostly a liquid, and if you don't pre-freeze, I would highly recommend it. It knocks a whole lot of time off of the entire freeze drying cycle. Okay, let's see how far our recipe of the day got for some medium trays. I think that it's very important to make sure that this is evenly distributed on your trays. So I would probably spoon it in, not just pour the pot onto the trays. I think that you want evenly spread out chunks. You want evenly spread out liquid as well. Mine ended up making 3 trays with just a little bit left over, which is perfect because I need some lunch. 1 bowl left. Before we go into the deep freeze, I'm gonna pop some dividers in these in the 10 portion setting. I'm gonna put some lids on this. I didn't mention, I did go onto pre-cut parchment. I would recommend going onto silicone or parchment with it because just the sugar amount in here, it's not super high, but it's enough that it could possibly stick to those stainless steel pans. And if you haven't had something that sticks to those pans yet, I hope that you don't ever have to go through that because it's a pain in the butt, especially after you lose part of your freeze drying product to sticking to the pan. We're gonna throw a lid on each of these, and then I will see you at the freeze dryer tomorrow morning. These guys look like they are nice and frozen. We're gonna go to the freeze dryer, pop these in with another tray of pork chops, and with any luck, we're gonna have some delicious portioned beef stew. And through the magic of YouTube, this is gonna take just a matter of seconds. Let's see what they actually take though. So this recipe, along with over 250 other recipes, can be found on freezedryingcookbook.com. We update that site weekly and add multiple recipes every single week to it. If you don't want to do the membership, you can do a hard copy version. This can be found on Amazon. We'll put a link for that down in the description. Please take a minute to subscribe to Live Life Simple if you have not already. We do primarily freeze drying on this channel. A few other things every once in a while. While you're there, click the bell to get notifications. That'll send you a notification every time a new video comes out. That's Sundays at 8 a.m. since this whole thing started. If you like the content we're providing, let us know, give us a thumbs up. If you're a new freeze dryer or you have questions about freeze drying, check out our Facebook group or our MeWe group. It's Retired at 40's freeze drying group. We can answer all kinds of questions. You can use this, the search magnifying glass on the site and search all kinds of old threads, topics, etc. And if you're thinking about pulling the trigger on a freeze dryer, please consider using our affiliate link. We'll put a link for that down in the description. That helps this YouTube channel. It helps us bring out new content to you, helps us maintain the Facebook and the MeWe groups and our social media outlets. That allows us to develop products that will streamline your whole processing of freeze-dried food, from Mylar bags, oxygen absorbers, lids for the trays, all the dividers for the trays, pre-cut parchment, tray stackers, silicone mats, and now our new food funnel. We have a large size funnel that will reduce your spillage, and we also have a stand that goes with it now too that's fully adjustable. It'll fit in a mason jar either size. All of those products can be found at freezedryingsupplies.com. We're a USA company, we're a small business. We develop and make the products in the United States, and that is possible from freeze dryers like yourself, so thank you for that. Our beef stew took just over 35 hours and it looks really, really good. I'm gonna bag these in the vacuum chamber sealer, and I'll see you in the freeze drying kitchen. So the beef stew is nice and vacuum sealed. Now let's find out how much our rehydration formula, how much water we're gonna need to make this spring back to life. And there's our finished product, and I have a secret. I didn't actually use beef in this. My wife is really not a beef fan in general, and especially beef stew, so I added some tempeh in here just so she would eat this as well. Where the beef stew flavor comes from is all of that delicious sauce and everything that you put in there and what you cook it with. I'm gonna start with 1/4 cup of hot water and kind of work my way up. That's definitely not gonna do it. I'm gonna just go right into adding another 1/4 cup. So we're up to 1/2 cup of water, and we're doing 1/10 square in the 10 portion dividers. And that looks just about perfect. I think that's gonna do really well. I'm gonna mix it together, we're gonna cover it, let it sit for about 3 minutes, and then we will revisit. All right, let's check this out. It smells really good, and the sauce did really well. Let's give this a taste test. I thought maybe this would take more than 3 minutes to rehydrate, but this rehydrated really fast, and it did really well. Everything is still really well coated as far as the beef stew sauce goes. Well, there you go. Just like Mom used to make, this rehydrates really well. It's also pretty inexpensive to make. Just make sure that you adjust your sweetness level the way you want it to with the brown sugar. I hope you found today's video helpful. In the meantime, this is Retired at 40. Remember to live life simple. Catch you next week.